Celeb Savant is a career retrospective type interview focusing on singers, actors, and industry experts. Join Barrett Edelstein now as he dives into the entertainment world.
British Nina Kristofferson is a multi-award-winning actor, singer, writer, producer, director, and senior university lecturer in The Voice. Her first musical play, Nina Kristofferson's Billie Holiday story, about the iconic jazz singer Billie Holiday, premiered and sold out at Edinburgh Fringe Festival, followed by a successful 2012 tour, culminating in a 2013 sold-out run in London's West End, Charing Cross Theatre. Nina has since gone on to write another musical, Timeless, which is a light-hearted musical sung in 5 different languages, celebrating some of our most loved songs from around the world. Other productions include Nina Kristofferson's Festive Christmas and Nina Kristofferson Sings Jazz. Nina has also played many lead roles in theatre and on screen, including Medea in Medea, Cleopatra in Antony and Cleopatra, Valerie Ronson in World of Darkness, Paula Simons in Doctors, Bess in Porgy and Bess, Liz Imbrie in High Society, amongst many others. Along with performing in concerts, Nina is also a soloist in opera classical soirees in the UK, USA, and Europe. She's a voiceover artist for commercials and games in the UK and abroad, and a co-presenter for Channel 2 Talk Radio Woman in Business radio show. Up next on Celeb Savant, we've got Nina Kristofferson. Where in the world are you and how are you doing?
I'm in London and I'm great. Life is good and it's sunny. Couldn't be better.
At what age, whether as a child or teenager, did you think, okay, I want to be in this creative world, and how did that journey progress?
Oh gosh, interesting question. About 6. Quite early on, actually. I watched a lot of the old movies, Spencer Tracy, Katharine Hepburn, all of those wonderful, great musicals and shoot me up films. And I got the bug to be an actor. And then as an actor, I watched so many different movies. And then I went to drama school and trained at GSA, Guildford School of Acting. I trained as an actor. And funnily enough, because at that particular drama school, you get a chance to do singing and dancing. So I ended up being good, a triple threat in all 3. And when I graduated, I literally had an audition for an acting role and a musical theatre role. And I got both. And it was a case of, which one do I do? And I was thinking, I don't know. And then I suddenly thought, let me try the acting because I know I can sing and everything because I was getting all the lead singing roles. And since then, I've been doing an acting role and then a musical theatre role, acting musical theatre, acting musical. And that's been my life.
Amazing. Since having the bug and completing school and then diving into this world professionally, are there any aspects that surprised you that you did not think would be part of the process, but is actually part of the process?
That's quite interesting. No, I don't think I was really surprised because when you go to drama school, you really get an idea of what the industry is going to be about. It really prepares you. So you're not going in cold, you're not going in blind. Basically, at the end of the year, they do like this showcase. So you get an opportunity to perform in front of the industry. And throughout the last year, they bring people into the industry to talk to you about what's going on. You're not really going in there blindly. Okay. It's only, I think, if you haven't trained where it's a blind spot, but really you're trained for the whole area. But there's one thing I think I would have liked more training in, which would have been film and TV. So we got a little bit, but not enough. And because that medium, as you know, has changed so much and is changing again, I would have loved more training on that. But otherwise, it was a pretty solid training.
Let's dive into in front of the camera first. What do you enjoy about being in films and television?
What do I enjoy? I love the aspect of the idea that you can repeat a scene. And you can do many takes, and from taking many takes, the editor will go in there and really form a story with the director. And if there's a script, great. And you get an opportunity to really carve out a different kind of personality. And when you in theatre, you have a longer period to basically rehearse for the role, and you have to repeat that every night. And every night, even though you're repeating it, it's never the same. It's always an unearthing of a different personality, but with the same kind of characteristics. Same as film, but there's much more agility. And what you do on camera, the editor and the director can change it around. So when I think about those two different angles, you get an idea and the opportunity to actually show off a little bit more of your personality in a different way, which is great. You get to see what the director, how they envisioned the character, because it's really their story from the writing concept for film. It's really their story, and they take that and they develop it into something much more unique, and often sometimes not what's on the page. And actually that's the same for theatre. I think a writer will create a story, but what the actor does with that and what the director brings out of the actor as well is two different things, especially when you think about film and TV. You get that opportunity to work in a really unique way, and working against other actors, they really can give you the opportunity to really come at your character in a different way, because you have to respond to what they give you.
Again, in front of the camera, what is the difference for you in your experience being in a movie compared to being on a series in a longer arc for a character compared to just being in an episode of a show?
I think when you're doing the movie, for me, it's about the different kinds of pauses, the different way you relate, the length. You have much more time to breathe into the character, which is great. So, if there's going to be a wide shot, a long shot, a close up, you get the opportunity to tell the story and the different kind of lens. And the eye movements can be quite broad, but when it's TV film, it's much more quick. The turnaround is much quicker, and therefore, your in has to be very quick, and your reaction time is slightly different, because but it's a series, it's time, maybe it's half hour generally what it is. The lines are often quite snappy and reactive in a different way, whereas for me, film, it's much more reactive, but you can breathe into it. It feels the cinematography of film in the juxtaposition for TV is really different. The scope and the color texture and the arc of the story, you really have time to breathe. And I'm talking about breathing because that's really quite interesting, because the way you actually get into focusing, and not everything will be fast unless maybe it's an action shot, but generally the medium is much more visual. And so I think for me, those are the differences that I really have to really focus on when I'm doing film and, series.
How important is research for you when you attacking roles in front of the camera?
It's everything. You can't do enough research, learning of the lines. I mean, I try to learn the lines really quickly, because it really informs the tempo of the character. And when you look at the tempo of the character and you're doing research, depending on what the character is, you can find that if you have enough of the idea of if it's a factual role or if it's, non-fiction, fiction, then you have the idea that you can paint an arc of the character that feels true to you. The characteristics are really realistic. It's how you would respond in real life. So when I'm researching, I try and see what the character, all the different things that the writer would say about the character, how the writer sees a character, and then how the director sees the character, how I see the character, and then what the other characters say about my character as well. And I look at all those different things and I see how they paint a picture, and I see what I want to get the audience to feel in any given scene. Basically, if there's a situation where there's something I want I've got to think about why I want it, how I'm going to get there, and how much time have I got to get there. And you think about the lenses, whether it's a long shot, short shot. Am I going to be able to get the ability to tell that story really open, or does it have to be quite dramatic? And therefore, how much of my face am I going to use? Little facial movements, but it's all in the eyes, the soul. You see you see the character through the eyes and everything. And then it's just being able to be given the chance to see all the different juxtapositions of the character that you see, everyone else sees, and learn it so it can be truthful, and step into that and be as real as possible. And you just take everyday situations with the lines and you put yourself in the lines. So it has that normality.
So it's basically learning the lines in your everyday life, so it feels normal when you are saying them on screen and it doesn't feel like you're acting.
Yeah, exactly. Because you want it to be an extension of yourself,
Yes.
but through the characters rather than anything else, So it has to be born of you. So things don't look awkward unless the character is awkward, then you play it awkward. But if the character's not awkward, you don't want it to look awkward. So those are the things. It has to be in your body. The animalistic aspect of it is really important. I do look at that as well, because as humans, we sort of copy animals, really. We have those characteristic traits that are quite interesting to actually portray, if it's monkeyish, if it's like a feline cat, or, how dark, how predatorial, because as humans, we can be predators, like animals. And is that character does it serve the story? All these different things. So you really have to dissect the script so you really know inside out. And I think it's a good idea to understand everybody else's character and how you sit within the whole arc of the story.
I've been hearing lately, specifically from studios, the biggest studios, that they're requesting simplified scripts for television and movies, because now people are on their cell phones while they're watching the movie, and the television and movie have now become the second screen. For me, that's just crazy. In my mind, you should make the script more interesting, more convoluted, more twisted and turny, so it allows the person to put their cell phone down and be away from that for a while. What are your thoughts of this debate and conversation?
I'm very much leaning towards your thoughts on it, because I think it's insulting to the audience. I think the audience have seen so much. And of course, they're on their phones all the time. And some people have more than one phone at any one given time. They have screens in front of them. However, if the story is good, if it's told well, you will capture the audience. But because I think we have a series of stories that's been told that are not, I would say that's obvious. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
You can know what's going to happen with the
Yes.
storyline. So it doesn't serve anyone. But in fact, at the moment, real life is much more scarier than what we see in film, right? So if you think of it that way. So now, but where is the humanistic side of things? I think we've gotten lost a little bit in the storytelling about how we actually communicate with each other and what's important in that communication. And I think when those stories are told, they really do pop out at you, and they really give you the opportunity to see the story. And I think where the studio is saying, okay, we have to simplify the story, so they draw out the opening of the story, something that could be told maybe in 5-10 minutes, is told in maybe 20, 25.
Yeah.
And it's just not interesting. And you think to yourself, get to the point. And I think that's why people are switching off. If you're watching something, you think, oh, where is this going?
Yeah.
You don't have to play out that scene so broadly, which is what the studios are making writers do, making directors do, that story's, the opening is too drawn out. We get it. So get to the story, whatever the story is. You don't have to set each thing up so much that it feels so condescending. It's boring to watch.
Yes.
And I think that's the mistake they're making. I think tell the story, allow the director to tell the story. If you've taken a story where the writing's good, tell that story. allow the editor and the director in the editing booth to really carve out something that's interesting, not drawn out because you feel that the audience is, have got to have time in that opening to watch a little bit, then go make a coffee, then come back. And that's what's happening. Of course, they're going to switch off because in real time, on the phone, those stories are told quickly and they're not drawn out. I think they've misunderstood the idea of what's happening. So I personally don't like it. I think tell the story, get a good story, good to go. I think before I won't say Marvel because I do like those movies and everything. I think before the trilogies and everything, stories used to be told because they were unique. We've lost that. That's why life is much more horrific, because life is much more interesting than the film. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It shouldn't be that. It shouldn't
because
be that.
there's number 10 of this franchise, number 20 of that franchise. I mean, I also love the Marvel and I love the DCs, but there's certain other franchises that like number 11, 12, 13 are coming out. I'm like, really? Do we need that?
Right.
Did we need number 4 and 5 and 6?
Exactly. I just think there's lots of stories to be told, and also give the opportunity to great writers to get into the industry, and directors as well, and producers. I think we've tunneled it to a few, and I think we need to open it back up again.
Okay, so now moving to theatre, what do you love about performing on stage?
It's immediate. It's immediate, You control the audience controls you. You really get the relationship. It's electric. And the idea that when you learn your lines and you stand in front of the audience and you really begin to communicate with them, you can almost feel their every breath, their every laughter. You can see when they cry. You can see when you've lost them. Do you know what I mean? When you're performing and they've switched off. So you're doing something wrong, especially if it's not part of the story. And then you have to twist it back to get them. That means you're either not in the story, you're not telling the story, you're not serving the story. Because I think every show in life has a tempo, right? And I think if you can feed the tempo, our energy, the energy of laughter, the energy of a joke, the energy of something serious, those things told within any show is really exciting. It was great to watch and feel that you have the ability to move from one to the other and take the audience with you. And when you're laughing, they're laughing. And it's electric. There's nothing better. It's just nothing better because it's immediate. It's so exciting. It's a wonderful medium to be able to perform on stage.
The audience comes and sees 1 or 2 shows. But for theatre, as we know, you guys are on stage 6, 7, 8 times a week, Tuesday through sometimes 2 shows on a Saturday, 2 shows on a Sunday. For you, how do you maintain your energy, body, mental, emotional balance during a run of a theatre show?
I think people don't actually understand you are an Olympian. As a performer, you have to have extremely great stamina. And that comes with, basically looking after yourself, making sure you have a great diet. Me personally, I run every morning, unless it's ice on the ground. So the running opens up my chest, opens up my breathing. I do breathing exercises because it just allows me the flexibility and the agility that I need and serves me for any show, any film or anything. And I think when you run, release the right endorphins. It allows you to get into a zone and shed any, rubbish or that's been maybe in your mind. So you just let go of it. And I've been doing that for pretty much all the time from when I started. I'm an ex-athlete, so I used to do that anyway. So I know how that serves you. And then I stretch as well. I have a routine that really serves me when I'm on stage. And I think it's really important that any artist really develops a really healthy routine where the diet is good as well as doing exercises, because the mental state is really important to keep, because you have a series of lots of rejections. Unfortunately, everyone goes through that. I give myself a three-day window. If I go for an audition and I haven't heard anything in 3 days, I let it go, because that means, if it comes back, perfect. But if I don't get it within those 3 days and I don't hear anything, because otherwise you're, what if,
Yes.
reading this, oh,
Yeah.
so you have to let that go. Otherwise, it does play on your mind, and you can't carry on throughout your day, because it engulfs you, especially if it's a role that you really want. And generally, if you want something, you don't always do your best. Do you know what I mean? Because you want to too much. There's something in that. There's something about not giving not giving a damn about what
Yeah.
happens. But that very rarely happens, especially because you often get roles that you think, it'd be great. I wait, I really want to do this. I've waited such a long time to get it. You lose the edge because you need to be relaxed. There's something within that hunger and that aggression when you really want it. If you don't give yourself the opportunity to say, yeah, it doesn't matter, you portray it in a different way. So I think your diet, how you look after yourself, is really important. Your mental health is really important. There are lots of places you can go as well if you do suffer with mental fatigue or mental stress or worries or anxiety. There are places that you can go. And I think personally, just do that as well as therapy. There's therapy also in having great friends, usually that you can talk to. That's really important. And you don't have to have a lot, just one or two that you can trust, and you can just say, well, this is going on for me. Can I talk to you about it? Or you just called up and go, there. You just have verbal diarrhea. You know what I mean? You didn't ask them, you just called them up, and then it just spills out. I do a lot of smoothies, because when you're using your voice a lot, if you eat too much and then use your voice, it's not good, because it can give you acid reflux. Yeah, it's really important to know what happens if you use your voice badly. If you use your voice on a full stomach, you need to have about hour and a half, 2 hours before you use your voice. So smoothies will give you the right kind of energy, and then, eat whatever meal. And I tend to eat really well. So I think those are the important things: your diet, making sure you have a good circle of friends, one or two, and basically just making sure you understand your craft and don't leave anything to chance, because if you go into the room prepared, it stops you from feeling anxious. The anxiety brings on a lot of those other issues. And so I think if your work ethic is really solid, it's really going to stop you from being anxious, which causes a lot of the problems. If you have problems learning your lines, find somebody who will help you. Or there's lots of apps, there's lots of different ins now to protect yourself.
I was reading that you wrote a couple of musicals and created a couple of your own musicals. What was the inspiration to do that, and how is that different to stepping into a role that's already been created?
When you write your own, it enables you to, which is what I did. I wrote for my own skills. People didn't know I could write, and I didn't know it was going to be successful. That was just the lots of prayers and hopeful wishes and everything. But I wrote for my skills. I love jazz, and I knew I could sing jazz. I'm a trained actor as well, so I knew I had the chops. So I wrote the Billie Holiday story, and in that I suddenly thought I wanted to sing her songs, but I also wanted to act. So, and I think that's why it was so successful. And people didn't expect there to be such visceral acting in there. They thought it was just going to be a light-hearted musical. And I suddenly thought, that's not going to serve Billie or her journey or the actual arc of what I'm trying to do. I wrote it for schools to begin with, that particular story. I didn't think anyone was going to be interested, so I wrote it for schools. And then I took it to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. It did well. And in that enabled me to tell Billie's vulnerabilities, her relationships, touching on that. And I wrote it to begin with for a big cast, but I couldn't afford that. So I suddenly thought, oh, I can afford that. I know I can do X, Y, Z. So it didn't start off as a one-woman show. I just suddenly thought, how am I going to take it to market? I've written this story, and then I suddenly thought, when I started putting the machinery together, it started falling apart pretty quickly because I needed so many different components, and I was needing to rely on so many different people. And I thought, unless you have deep pockets, people aren't really that interested. And I thought, you know what? I can just make it into a one-woman show. Let's see what happens. When it went to Edinburgh Fringe Festival, what was so unique was that Amy Winehouse had passed about the same time, 2013. And then when she passed, people made the comparison about her life and how she was performing on stage. And she was very, very inspired by Billie Holiday. So she almost copied a lot of Billie Holiday's history, her life. So people immediately connected with the raw, visceral, emotional side of it and the story. And Amy Winehouse copied Billie's voice. So there was immediate in, and the audience really disrupted, with excitement and comparisons and love of Billie Holiday. And then it went to the West End, same thing again, sold out for the season. It's won loads of awards. And the word of mouth got out that it wasn't just her music, her songs. It was the telling of a story of how she was abused, how she was, chased by the FBI, her relationships, her marriages, her relationship with drugs, and that, and I don't shy away from taking the drugs on stage. So I wanted people to see what that was like for her, and what the immediate reaction that would leave her having to perform. And since then, I've met so many people who have, because it's such a generational show, they've taken their children to see the show, and it's helped them to actually see what life can be like if you take drugs, the after effects, what the abuse of drugs, how to stay away from that, what the music industry is like, and what people are like, the relationships. So it's really in lots of anecdotes between the songs, her story, her unearthing at a time where she's basically between heaven and earth. So she's always going back and forth, and she's basically saying, just give me one more chance. Dear God, just give me one more chance. And she gets another chance. But then she starts telling the audience, this is what happened, and then she goes into this completely, complete meltdown of the emotional side of it. It becomes really so encompassing. And then she'll snap into a really happy song.
Okay.
Because that's life, right?
Yeah.
Because that's life. So I wanted people to see what life really was like for her, how she was abused, how she was chased, and then she had to sing like it was nothing. And that's why it stood the test of time. And then I have another musical where I tag Timeless in there, and I tag my name because I'm trying to get people to learn my name in my shows. So Nina Kristofferson's Billie Holiday Story, which is now in concert form. So I'd say Nina Kristofferson sings Billie Holiday. And then this next one, Nina Kristofferson's Timeless. And these are timeless classics, like from Beyonce to Puccini, or from Celeb to Puccini. And it's sung in 5 different languages. So French, Italian, Spanish, Latin, English, and French. And so people hearing that thinking, what? That's never going to work. It works because each song has been cleverly chosen to really tell the arc of an emotional journey. So she's like a chanteuse, and French singing, Ne me quitte pas, is quite the flavor is quite unique. ne me quitte pas, il faut oublier tout possible qui s'enfuit de chat. Oublier la tombe, you have an immediate inner another time. And then when you're singing opera, it's vast, it's big, it's guttural. And then, and then I'm singing some jazz. And then I'm singing some R&B. Do you know what I mean? Some James Brown. Do you know what I mean? So people are like, what? So, so they're completely in it because they don't have a moment to sit back because it's like, the show opens with a bit of James Brown, so it's like, wow. And then, and then within a couple of songs, there's moving on to another gospel song. So it's really, it's fast paced, but then they get a moment of opera, so O mio bambino caro. So they get a moment to take in that, big feeling of what that expansion is like and the vastness of the voice as well, from 1 minute, singing a bit of soul R&B and then to a bit of prayer with Ave Maria. And then moving from that then to a bit of Nina Simone. And they're like, what? But then, the clapping and the...
Yes.
Yeah.
Getting into it.
So it's like a spiritual sort of unearthing of great, classic, brilliant tunes that has allowed us to escape, because we escape in music. Music gives us the ability to move from out of ourselves to leap into a moment of joy or sadness, because the music sort of allows us to sort of self-indulge in it. Music is so healing.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Celeb Savant. Please follow Barrett on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook at Celeb Savant. That's CelebSavant.